Welcome to the worst of the Riot Extra. Today's topic, this is a big one. And actually, I feel like we alluded to this. We paved the way for this topic to take place on a recent Worst of the Riot Extra. Because if you recall, one of the previous episodes, we talked about dating people that are opposite of you. And then late last week comes this report in the Financial Times that finds that more and more, and this isn't just in the United States, this is worldwide, that more and more men are becoming more conservative and women are becoming more liberal as far as like people under 30. And it's much different than it has been in the past. Because typically, yes, younger people are more likely to be liberal than older people. You get more conservative as time goes on, typically. But what's weird is men are young men, like under 30, way more conservative worldwide than older men, which is that's very historically very unusual. It's also unusual. It's just weird. Women are getting more liberal, but it's weird that men, as they grow up, aren't starting off liberal and getting more conservative. Now, here's where it gets weird or interesting.
Here's where it gets even weirder.
Yeah, well, even
this
weirder.
Is a doozy.
Even more. What's wild is South Korea is like they are further ahead of the curve than other countries on this. And so in South Korea, this phenomenon is being blamed for them having like the lowest birth rate in the world because men and women, there's like a 50% gap. In other words, 75% of women under 30 are liberal, whereas 75% of men under 30 are conservative there. And so it's hard to find somebody that shares your views on the world. It's very difficult. And so it's hard to pair up and date and have kids. And so, I mean, that sounds like an issue, right?
It does. It sounds like we talked about it before, that politics are one of the hardest things to agree to date on if you're differently. If you're on the other side of it.
Yeah, that was very high on our ranking.
Oh, one of our highest ones.
Yeah. And although we covered and people chimed in on it, it's not impossible. There are people who date their political opposites, and that can work very well for them. But when it's such a high percentage of people are opposite, and it is such a difficult thing to do, and the views are so opposite, it makes it much more difficult, and it can lead to society-wide strife and changes and less kids, which you do need to continue on your society. So this leads to the question. First of all, why? Why is this happening? Why do you think, Isaiah, this is occurring now when it hasn't historically been the case? Break it down.
In my mind, the reason can be whatever you think it is. Mm-hmm. But my reasoning has to be something I like to refer to as the boomerang effect.
Okay.
So as of late, especially, and this is happening with politics all across the world right now, is if someone's trying to convince you that their side is the right answer, it just pushes you farther away, right? And that happens all the time in politics.
Sure.
And so I think right now, a lot of young men and young women are being told that by a lot of the older generations, that like a lot of younger men are being told, oh, young men are so liberal right now, way more than ever before. Their men aren't manly like they used to be or traditional like they used to be. And I think that's pushing younger men to even put off the persona or even want to be conservative even more because everyone's telling them that they're not.
Yep.
And so if you are someone who is even slightly conservative, that's a younger guy, you're going to put it to the past the limits because everybody's telling you that you're not. And so in my mind, that makes sense.
That makes some sense for sure. That's your top explanation?
That's my explanation. Because because a lot of older men, as we talked about, become more conservative as you get older.
Yeah.
If you ask a bunch of older guys, do you think that young guys between the age of 18 and 25 are as conservative as they used to be? They would say no. Right. They would say so many more of them are liberal. And so then that just makes all of the young guys that are conservative just more upset. Yeah. Because politics make people upset anyway.
They're upset and they have to like prove themselves.
Exactly.
Yeah. You're a guy.
Because your grandpa's telling you that you're not traditional conservative enough. And so then they feel as if they need to prove that they are. And so they feel like that's the right answer.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. One of the theories, and I feel like you take credit for that. I can't take credit for this theory, but it is one that is thrown out there as well. And that is that now with TikTok and so many social media sites and whatever that use algorithms, YouTube, to determine what you see. In the past, women and men, as they're growing up, they're seeing the same similar news from the same similar sources. They're seeing the same similar TV shows and stuff like that. But now, when you're hopping on TikTok and YouTube and the algorithm, like you're a guy, it's starting to feed you guy stuff, and then it feeds you more and more, like because you've already gone down this. And so it just makes you more and more stuff. And you're never going to see something that is more likely to be from a liberal woman's perspective as a guy. You're just seeing more guys that are like you, and then you become, and it's just a reinforcing cycle. And that makes a lot of sense too, which leads to the next question is, how does this get fixed? Because that's really the big question. The proof is in the facts. The facts are there. There's more and more divide among people as they grow up. Whether you're a guy or a girl, you're more likely to be liberal or conservative. How do we fix this? And I know the easy answer would be, if you're a guy, you just go, well, women need to be more conservative. And if you're a woman, you'd say men need to be more liberal. But it's not that simple.
Yeah, and going back, not even moving on to that yet, your point, I wanted to comment on what you said.
No,
you thought the reason was,
go for it.
Which is because you're saying that For You pages are just feeding you more and more and more, which I think that's a great explanation, because you think about like your parents, whatever side they're on, whether it's Republican or Democrat, what news are they taking in? They're taking in only their side. If they watch the news, your dad's either watching Fox News or CNN or whatever he aligns with, that's what he's taking in. And the more you take in, the deeper you go on that side. The farther right, the farther left that you become, because you're not taking in the other side, which is fine. People do that. That's pretty normal. And so this becomes even crazier when you take in social media, because especially like if you've ever went on your parents' social media, like my dad's TikTok page, you know what's on my dad's TikTok page? If my dad wasn't further to one side before, he's even farther now. Like every day he is being reassured that whatever his belief is even more right. And so when you think about social media, like you said, that young people that are like 18, 19, 20, once they start to lean a little bit one way, then every time they get on TikTok, it just leans them a little further, And you think about like your dad, how much news was he taking in between 18 and 25? There's no possible way he was taking in as much news as you are with TikTok and Twitter and Instagram, or even just media in general. Because,
so much of what you see feels like news.
Yeah, exactly.
Or... is shown through the perspective of it being some kind of news.
Exactly.
Because that's what makes it important.
Yeah, and so when you're on TikTok every day, or you're on Twitter every day, and that's being put in your face, we have so much access to media that I feel like people are able to develop which side they're on so much quicker than before.
That's actually a good point too. I think more people growing up in the past probably didn't have, even though they tended to be on the grand scale of things, what we would consider more liberal, it was probably just, I don't really care that. Like, you probably just did whatever your parents did, but you didn't care that much because you weren't constantly being showing headlines about how whoever is destroying the world. You weren't really caring about that.
It wasn't in your face. Like, you had other things going on.
You were watching cartoons and Lizzie McGuire and stuff like that.
Like when you were between the ages of 18 and 25 in like 1970, 1980. Like, you weren't taking in the amount of media. Like, you could read the newspaper, you could turn on the TV, but the amount of media that people see today on their phones, like all people talk about is, people are always on their phones. They're constantly intaking media. And so before, between the ages of 18 to 30, you weren't even able to figure it out yet because you weren't getting it thrown in your face like people are now. And so I think that could also be a reason.
It used to be, and this is well before our time, but you think about not that long ago, if you wanted to have news, you either had to watch it like at what was it? Is it 5 o'clock news when the news usually comes on the TV? 5 o'clock news, or you had to read a newspaper. Now again, it's just constant. Whenever you want news, and a lot of times even when you don't want news, you're getting it.
Yeah. And I think too, and older people are gonna say, like, I knew, like when they were between the ages of 30, like 18 and 30, like they're like, I knew that I was conservative or I knew that I was liberal, and you probably did. But the people in the middle that hadn't decided yet, there were probably a lot more people in the middle than there are now. It's really hard to say I don't care now when it's just in your face. Like, can you imagine saying, oh, politics? I don't really care about politics. I never see it. I'm focused on my job. I'm focused on doing this. It's nearly impossible not to see it. And so I think back then, you probably did know if you were conservative or liberal. But there's way more people in the middle that hadn't decided yet. And now you can't just be in the middle.
And you think, let me map this out too. What some of this comes down to is that politics have become much more social than like policy based. In other words, how you feel about what would be a good issue to focus on. Like religion would be a good one. How you feel about religion is your politics. How you feel about abortion is your politics. It's much less the policy of like, what should we do with like when I remember my parents, taxes used to be a huge thing. Now I feel like everybody feels like you're getting taxed too much in a way, but nobody, like that's just not a top, maybe just because everybody agrees on it.
No one's going to come up to you and say, what's your stance on taxes? They're going to come up to you and say, what's your stance on abortion? Which is a way worse subject to have to talk about.
Yeah, what drives what you think, how you identify is way different than it used to be.
Yeah.
And it feels like, and it's stuff that does feel like it bleeds more into your everyday life than taxes, where you can kind of keep that compartmentalized.
How do you feel about gas prices? That's an easy conversation to have.
Yeah.
I think they're too high. I don't really care about them. I think they could be higher. It doesn't matter. But when people ask you, are you pro-life or pro-choice? Then that's when they immediately, if you say you don't care about taxes, people aren't going to be like, oh, well, I disagree with you and I think you're horrible.
Yeah.
People are going to be like, oh, you just must not care about taxes. If you say pro-life or pro-choice, whatever your thing is, they're going to think you're a bad person no matter what if they're on the other side.
Because it literally is life and death.
Yes.
And taxes are not. So then the question is now, what do we do? How do we fix it? We're just two guys on a podcast. We've got to figure this out.
How can we fix it? Because the real question, the issue that we're talking about, circling back around, is that men and women are not going to like each other.
That's right.
I've been looking at some graphs here, and one of the graphs says that, which this makes sense, that single women seem to be the most liberal by far. That's the most, like the biggest demographic.
Yeah.
Which makes sense because they don't want to marry the conservative man.
Yeah.
Like the conservative women are not having issues finding a man that can relate to them. The ladies that are liberal are having a harder time, especially the ones that aren't willing to trying to meet in the middle on politics. You're less likely to find a man that's also liberal, oddly enough. How do we fix this?
Your pool has been significantly reduced. Of options. Now, how do we fix it?
Do we start showing each gender completely different For You pages? Do we try to bring them to the middle?
The switcheroo.
The old switcheroo.
Yeah.
If you keep on clicking conservative stuff, we'll just feed you.
We'll show you more and more liberal things. Do you think?
Oh, that's the boomerang effect.
That's what I was going to say. The boomerang effect. I think that would just lead to people being more angry.
They would just get mad at TikTok. They're like, why do you keep showing me this blasphemy?
But maybe that would get them off of TikTok.
Oh, true.
If it's just making them mad, I don't know. If they're seeing stuff that they clearly disagree with, like there's a reason you don't watch the opposite news network. There's a reason your parents, if they're conservative, don't watch MSNBC probably, because it just would make them upset. So maybe if that's what you were seeing, the opposite of what you actually believe, you'd get off of TikTok, which could actually, or YouTube or whatever, actually be healthier for you because you spend less time thinking about it and you'd still have your beliefs, but it wouldn't be such a top tier thing that's constantly on your mind.
And you think about it too. Could work. It's like when your mom and dad, and this wasn't true in my family, but I know this was true in some, where mom and dad would turn on the TV and they'd be watching the news, and either mom or dad would get to pick the station that we're watching, and then the other one, about 15 minutes in, would say, oh, I'm going to bed. I'm not taking in any more of this.
Yeah.
You can watch this crap if you want, but me, I'm hitting the hay.
Yeah. That's an idea. Not a very good. Now, we can't just start up our own social media, and TikTok would be foolish to do that because
It would drive people away.
yeah, all of a sudden you have way less users, and so that it's unrealistic.
Can't work.
Other ideas. Now, this is crazy.
I love crazy.
What if there are more influencers, people, leaders, podcasters, things of all these natures that appeal to both? Can that be done now? Because we're running out of time.
That's true.
If we don't fix this soon, then that will not be viable either, because everybody will be so opposite that it would be impossible. But here in the United States, we still, compared to Korea anyways, we've still got time. It might feel like we're very divided. We still got a chance. We need men and women that appeal to both men and women.
That's a good answer.
Yeah.
And you think about, too, it also probably would be a good idea if when somebody disagreed with your politics, if that didn't mean in your mind that they're automatically a bad person.
That is tough.
There used to be
the true answer. That's the true answer.
There used to be a day when people could be a Republican or Democrat, and that didn't mean that you were this, and that. That just meant that you disagreed with me, and I'd move on with my day.
Yeah.
But now, if you're a conservative, that means that you must be this, and you must be that.
Many older people lament that because, like, they remember the days. Like, you could have a buddy that was the other party, and you guys could debate, and then you're friends at the end of the day, still friends. And it feels like that's less and less. And I think the statistics show that's less and less how it works.
Yeah, it is less and less. Like if you try to talk about whether you're a Democrat or Republican to the other side, then you're going to be depicted as this, and that. And so that's the part when women and men, they don't like being depicted that way. And those conversations never end in, you know what, maybe we should go out for drinks again. Maybe we should go on a second date after all this. And so that's the hard part. But also, I think it's when you talk about it, like if you're talking about when men and women that are dating, if they're trying to get together and they're on the opposite sides, I think a big part of it is how soon do you bring up that conversation?
Ooh, yeah.
Because, like, if your mom and dad who have been together for 30 years are on different sides, like, they've just accepted it. Like, they know that they love each other, and no matter what, even though they disagree on that, they're going to stick it out. But if it's the second date...
You know what's crazy, too? You know what I don't think I've ever heard this. A lot of people get divorced, right?
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever heard somebody get divorced because of politics.
Well, I'm getting divorced because she's a Democrat all of a sudden.
She voted for Biden. That was
It's over. I'm sure it has happened.
Yeah.
But I think it's one of those things that's like people want to bring it up so early on. Like I've had girls before, back when I was going on dates, that the very first date I was asked, are you a Republican or a Democrat? Are you a liberal or conservative? And I would always say, that's a crazy question.
On the first date.
You really want to talk about that? I would say, I feel like that's a horrible idea. Why would we talk about that? Because the rest of the day could have went great. But if I'm not conservative, or if I'm not liberal or whatever you want, then you're immediately going to ask me. And so I think it's just important to take your time, figure out if you actually like the person, and then you can bring that conversation up in good time. Or else you're just, if you want, and if you're going to ask that question on the first date, then you just need to go to a dating website that says, are you conservative or liberal? If you're just looking for a conservative, just say that. That should be your third question on the app, the dating app. Are you conservative or liberal?
And there has to be, and I don't know this, but there has to be apps that are specifically meant for whatever your political beliefs are. RepublicanMeet.com. It's got to be a thing.
And on Hinge and on Tinder, you can put what you are in your bio.
Right.
You can put if you're Democrat or if you're Republican, if you're liberal or conservative, or if you're moderate or whatever it is. And people, if you're brave, you'll put that on there.
Yeah.
And people can see it. My girlfriend had hers on there. Wild. Wild girl she is. But I didn't care.
Yeah. No,
because she aligned with me, so it was all cool.
If it actually matters to you at all, you should have it on there.
Yeah, you should.
Well, you're not doing yourself any favors by keeping it. But I think it's more important, too, not to ask somebody. I wouldn't ask if it was me, are you a Republican or Democrat? Because then, just because they say one or the other, you're ascribing probably a bunch of stuff in your mind of what you think a Republican or a Democrat is, and you're ascribing all of that to them. And that might not be how they actually think. There's a big wide range in both parties, and people that aren't in either party, there's a big wide range. So I don't think that actually, it tells you a lot, but I think it's going to actually make you make more assumptions.
Yep.
It's not the best way to find out about how somebody politically thinks. If you actually want to give them a chance and get to know them and find out, in this case, the dating world, if they're a person you could get along with, if it's something that could blossom into something beautiful.
Yeah, I think that's kind of just how it goes. Is it takes time to figure out. You could be one side or the other, but that won't tell you the whole book if you read the first page, And so like with me and my girlfriend, I knew what she was when we went on the first date.
Mm-hmm.
I already knew, and I was cool with it because she was the same as me. So I knew we weren't gonna argue. I was like, perfect, all right, we can talk about this right now if you want.
Or the other alternative is that you can do what Isaiah and I do, and that is never tip your hand.
Draw the middle of the line.
Yeah. I would love for somebody, I think about this routinely. If somebody actually had to guess how I vote, I think people would make assumptions because we're white guys.
Yep.
Under 30. But if somebody had to guess truly, like based on what we say, would they be able to know?
Would they be able to guess it?
And the truth is, for me, for you, I think, and we work together every day, I think I have an idea.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
I don't know either.
And I think I kind of like it that way.
I like it. Me and Hudson have never talked about politics at all because you know what? If you're talking about dating, if we do a show together every day, that'd be crazy.
Yeah.
If we were talking politics in here on what's not supposed to be a political show. But I think it keeps the flow going good for the show when people don't know. But you can guess.
You can guess and you can learn. You could probably make some good educated thoughts about different issues, but I don't think that when it comes down to at the end, I strive to be hard to pin down.
That's the best part about it.
Yeah.
Keep yourself right in the middle. And then
I
guess
like
what?
I like to be real slippery.
Everybody loves you then. When people text in, I'm like, hey, you know what?
Yeah.
I'm on your side. Am I on your side? Maybe I am. Maybe I'm not.
We just pretend to agree.
I'll always agree with you
can't
guys.
prove that we don't agree.
I'm friends with all my liberal listeners, all my conservative listeners.
That's true. That part, it is. I want to be very clear that I truly do respect everybody.
Mm-hmm.
I know that there's very hard and fast opinions I hold, but I don't write anybody off, and I don't want anybody to stop listening to the show because they think differently than us, or think the same, or think we think differently than them. I don't want any of that, and that's not just because a bigger audience is better. It's because I don't want to have everything come down to politics.
On a show that's supposed to be fun.
Yeah, we're having fun. We're having
People
a good
text
time.
in. I don't laugh or snicker at your guys' texts if you disagree with me. I just hold my comments to myself.
Yeah. What would be the
fun in that?
You really want us to start arguing with you?
Yeah, it sounds like
Nobody
horrible.
wants that.
Nobody wants that.
We just want to have a good time.
Exactly. You really want to wake up in the morning at 6 a.m. and come on to RadioU and hear us bickering about politics?
And you think, too, we're combative enough about stuff that doesn't matter.
Can you imagine?
We argue about fast food. Forget about if we have to start arguing about,
Donnie T versus Joe B, baby. I mean, that'd be crazy talk. You want to come in here and hear that in the morning? Hudson and I talking about it. We sound unintelligent enough talking about fast food. You want to hear us talk about Donnie T and Biden? That's crazy talk.
Yeah. We'll just keep on staying in our lane.
But we'll still talk about it.
Yeah.
We'll just joke about it.
Yeah.
It's more fun
We're
that way anyway.
Just having a fun time. Trying to help. It's the Riot.